Glenn Van Woepen is a career journalist and the founder of Van Media Group Private Limited, which is a global media consultancy. As an international journalist for over 20 years, he worked in newsrooms and as a reporter for CNN International, CNBC Asia, ABC Radio News, NHK Japan, and others. He helped to cover stories ranging from Balkans wars, Millennium celebrations, the war against terror, Hong Kong's handover to China, and countless natural and man-made disasters. In more recent years, he's been coaching high-performing business leaders and journalists across ASEAN, Europe, North America to be confident, concise communicators. There's a lot of people can use that. With a master's degree in digital media management and a bachelor's degree in journalism, he is passionate about how all of us can be more effective communicators in our evolving digital world. Please welcome Glenn Van Woepen and his talk entitled Leadership is Live, Lessons from the Newsroom. With two M's.
I'd like you to take a trip with me, a trip to Tokyo. Some of you may have been to Shibuya Crossing. It's an amazing place. Every crossing, some 2,500 people go across this intersection. The train station right next door has 2.5 million people go through it each day. This reminds me of our digital landscape today and our communication landscape. There is so much coming at us all the time. So many messages, so much noise. And in fact, we ourselves are guilty of creating some of that noise as well and pushing it out. I'd like your help, if you would help me for just a moment. I'm going to show you another slide of Shibuya Crossing. And when I do, I'd like you to shout out, to call out the first thing that comes to your mind, that comes to your attention. The thing that stands out, that is the most clear and concise to you. If you're ready to help me with that, just say yes. Yes. All right, here we go. Now remember, I'll show you the slide and just call out that thing that you see. In 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Thank you very much. If you're like most people, you might have said the 109 sign or the monster logo or maybe the DMM, or maybe you just said all the people. This is exactly the way that our news landscape and our communication landscape is at us today. Everything's coming at us all the time. I lived in Tokyo for about 5 years, and I passed through this intersection every day, and I was always amazed at the amount of noise and information that was coming at me. Over the past 20 years, working in newsrooms as a journalist, we faced decisions every day when information came into us. We had to decide, how are we going to process this information? What is going to go out? What goes to our viewers, our listeners, or our readers? Quickly, we had to decide this information and put that out there to us. But today is all about you. And why I say that is because in those years as a journalist, I learned several things about how effectively newsrooms can communicate and how newsrooms can disseminate information and work with teams effectively. And I'd like to share those points with you today. There are 3 pillars, I believe, that every newsroom falls back on to efficiently and effectively communicate with themselves and then communicating with the outside world. Would you be interested to hear what they are? Yes. Okay, good. Let's look at what they are. The first one is listen to confirm. The second one is lead the experts. And the third one is diverge to converge. Now, what does all that mean? The first one, listen to confirm. Every executive knows, every CEO, even every intern in the office knows that you have to know how to communicate with people. But before you can do that, you have to know how to listen to them. Whether you're in the C-suite right now, or whether you hope to be in the C-suite someday, you know that this is urgently important. In the newsroom, probably one of the most important qualities that a person can have is listening. This is my friend Andreas. Just last week, he retired from CNN after 30 years in that newsroom. In fact, I would say, if you've ever watched CNN and you've seen any major news story on CNN, international or domestic, he has probably had a hand in making sure that went on TV. As a supervising producer, if a story was worth putting on, he would put it on. If it wasn't, he wouldn't. If a story was worth it and he didn't put it on, he would feel the heat. Now, Andreas is a great guy. He's from New Orleans. He loves his food and his music and his Mardi Gras. But he can be a little bit difficult to work with sometimes, and I think he would agree with that because his standards were so exacting. But the one thing that Andreas knew how to do and did well every day of the year for 30 years was listen. Whether he was listening to people in the newsroom, the writers, the producers, those people, or whether he was listening to somebody who was out in the field, a field producer or a reporter, Andreas knew what he didn't know, and he knew enough to listen to those who did know. Many of you may be familiar with Steve Carell's TV show The Office, or the Ricky Gervais version, the original version. Leaders, good leaders, know that they have to listen to confirm, unlike Steve Carell. Good leaders know when they know what they don't know. And they also know that they are going to ask for input from their team, because they also know that the teams that they have, no matter how inexperienced or experienced, have a wealth of knowledge, of experience, of information, of contacts. Good leaders listen to confirm. In newsrooms, this happens all day long and all night long. Constant listening to confirm. Whether it's breaking news or not, colleagues are understood to have so much experience and so much knowledge that the leaders in those newsrooms, typically the supervising producer or the executive editor, know that they have to listen, and they should listen to them. Great leadership, great communication starts with listening to confirm. Our second point, our second pillar of good communication, of good work in teams and in businesses and in the newsroom is leading the experts. In live leadership, because every day leadership is live, just like the newsroom, we know that we have to empower the teams. We have to empower the teams to go and do the work that they know how to do best. Now, in every office or in every organization, maybe you have some in yours, there's a micromanager. And no one likes a micromanager except the micromanager himself or herself. We know that all too well. But we also know that if the good manager knows how to lead the experts and get the most out of the teams and let them go and do their work, but the inspired leader also knows that sometimes there's a gut feeling about something that works well, or maybe something that doesn't work well. And in those cases too, the leader must use their internal expert and lead the team. Lead the experts. September 11th, 2001. As you may recall, it was a day unlike any other. It was a day that challenged everyone, no more so than people in the news business who were trying to cover it. It was unreal on so many levels. And it was a day for so many when leadership became live. Adrenaline, disbelief, helplessness, sadness, empathy, all of these came to the fore in every newsroom when this happened. We all felt it. Whether you were in a newsroom in Chicago or Los Angeles or Hong Kong or London, everybody felt leadership was live that day when it came to covering that news, when it came to the empathy for the emergency workers who were there, the people that were in those buildings, the people that were on the planes. Leadership was live. Captain Brian Smith is a good friend of mine. You would have never heard of him. He's one of the chief pilots for Air Canada. In fact, he is so good, he's the guy that certifies all the other Air Canada pilots to fly. He's called the air check pilot. That day, Brian and his co-pilot were flying to LaGuardia Airport, September 11, 2001. Plane full of passengers, early in the morning, people going into New York to catch early meetings and to start a vacation, doing a lot of different things. That day was unusual, and over a cold beer a couple of years ago, he told me this story. It was an amazing story, and he still shook as he told the story to me. And the story went something like this. He said, we were flying in to New York, and that day was a bit unusual for them because the air traffic controllers routed them directly over Central Park. And they were about 20 miles out, and they could see some smoke, one of the buildings down the south end of the Battery. It was one of the World Trade Center buildings burning. But he thought, at that point, we just figured it was an air conditioning unit or something on the rooftop that had caught fire. No big deal, building fires happen. As they got closer, and this was roughly the scene, not exactly, but roughly the scene they saw, they could tell that something was very, very wrong. Repeatedly, they tried to contact the control tower, and all the control tower would say is, you are cleared to land, get on the ground as fast as you can. No headings, no bearings, no speed. Didn't even give them a runway number. Now, fortunately, Brian is experienced enough that he's flown to LaGuardia many times. He knew the landing sequence, he knew the pattern, and also, fortunately, it was a clear day. I mean, this was the view, right? They could see other airplanes in the air. They could see, what was happening with the air traffic as they were trying to land at a very busy airport. As they went down past Central Park and past the second tower, the plane hit the second tower as well. They had an eagle-eye view to all of that. Brian turned to his co-pilot and he said, this is on us. We've got to get this plane full of passengers down. We are getting no help from anybody. And he said, we're going to do this by the book. He goes, keep your visual field out there, keep looking, make sure there are no other planes around. And in what seemed like hours for he and the crew, because by this time the passengers knew stuff was happening too, he guided the plane around, lined up, and safely landed at LaGuardia. The moment he was on the ground, air traffic control came on and announced the airport is closed. His flight was the last flight to land at LaGuardia that day, and he did it safely. And that day, the experts were the guys in the control tower. They were supposed to be the ones helping. And through a series of amazing circumstances, as we all know today, they empowered Brian and his pilot, and many other pilots, I might add, to be the experts. They led the experts and let the experts do their jobs. Now, it's hard to imagine, in our context, having that kind of life and death power in the offices we work in or in the school we study at or anything that we do as individuals. But the point is made. When you lead experts, when you let people do what they're good at, they do it right and they do it well. We can't micromanage that. And in a world where everyday leadership is live, just like it's live on TV, it's live in our lives, we have to rely on being able to do the things we know how to do and letting other people do it as well. Boxing Day 2004, a Sunday morning. I wasn't at the office because the office was closed. I was working at CNBC. Business news doesn't run on the weekends, right? Because that's not when the stock markets are open. I was going down for a swim at our pool. My then girlfriend, now wife, Kat, and I were going to go out to brunch afterward. The phone rang. My mobile. I picked it up. It was my then boss at the time. Glenn, have you seen the news? Have you seen what's going on? I said, well, no, actually. I just woke up. I was going to go down to the pool. What's happening? I'll continue the story in a moment. Because when we talk about leadership being live, I can't finish this story without talking about diverging to converge. And that is our third point. She got back on the phone with me and she said, this is what happened. Huge earthquake, Indonesia, massive tsunami, racing across the ocean at 800 kilometers per hour. It's hitting Malaysia. Of course, Indonesia got hit first. Malaysia, Thailand, Myanmar, India, Sri Lanka. The devastation is unbelievable. We have to do something. We decided that we would send teams out, obviously one to Aceh. That was the most devastated place, as you all know. Another team went to southern Thailand. My team went to Sri Lanka to cover what would be an amazing story. We had to diverge. We had to go out to seek the information and the input that we needed. All of our teams were gone for a number of days. In that time, we surveyed the damage. We talked to the people. It was heartbreaking. We saw the death. We saw the broken families, the broken homes, businesses that were literally washed from the face of the earth. We diverged. We got the stories. We sent those stories back into our newsroom. And this is the thing about divergence. It is not clear, it is not easy sometimes, but you have to do it. You have to send people out. You have to send your people, no matter who they are, to do what they can do to get the story. We sent our stories in, and then the folks in the newsroom converged. They brought all of that together to put coherent coverage together of a story that was, throughout this region, an unbelievable one to cover. Divergence and convergence oftentimes looks like this. On the right side, it's really messy. Even in our own lives, we know this. It starts very hectic, very chaotic. Everyone's doing a lot of different things. And then eventually, as everybody converges, it comes down to more like the right side, which is the way it should be. And nothing was ever more true when we covered that story on the tsunami. The key takeaways are you have to have faith in that team of yours. You have to diverge and let them diverge and conquer. Go out in the world, whether it's doing a Google search or whether it's traveling to go meet a client or out to get artifacts or some sort of tools. You have to let your audience, your teams rather, diverge and then come back and converge and assemble. It's not only a great use of resources, but it shows your team or the people that you're working with that they are valued, that they are trusted. Let's go back to Shibuya. This unbelievable place that is almost like Blade Runner to many of us who have been there, and those of you who may have seen it on TV. It is a place of so much information and so much noise and so much excitement. It is every bit like the world we occupy today online, in our social media, in our offices. It is an amazing time for all of us to be alive. We are receiving more information than we can possibly ever process. We are creating, or at least have the ability to create just as much information to send to other people. But we must learn how to communicate that in the right way and how to leverage teams and leverage people that we work with in the most efficient way to make sure that those messages are received and that those messages are sent out. Because we know that leadership is live every day. We must be clear and concise and memorable in the way that we present that information. So in a world when leadership is live, we all must do three things. Our pillars, the pillars that newsrooms have taught us, we have to listen to confirm. We have to lead the experts around us, and we have to diverge to converge. I offer this up to you today. I hope that you will use it, and I hope it helps you to become just as effective as the best newsroom around. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Wow. Powerful, Glenn. Thank you.